those of us that have experienced the blessings and the wonder and the power of the King, I think it's time we broadcast it to every single nook and cranny of this city, to every corner, to every community. Come on, we need to broadcast. There ain't nobody like Jesus. Come on, I said there's nobody like Jesus. We need to broadcast. He's a healer. We need to broadcast. He's a redeemer. We need to broadcast. He's a way maker. We need to broadcast. He's a deliverer. We need to broadcast. When you're down and out, He's the lifter of your head. We need to broadcast. You may have tried other things. This world has nothing that can compare to the glory and the splendor and the wonder of our God.
We're so glad you've joined. I want to encourage you to help us by sharing this stream on our social media sites. We also, let's get right to today's service.
Church live. Whether you're here live or watching an archive, visiting us through Facebook or YouTube, we are so glad that you are with us today. And we are watch on Facebook or YouTube. We want you to be involved. Church is going to take care of that in this quarantine season. But if you know of someone that needs to be engaged in a conversation like this, why don't you give it give us your likes, your hearts, your course, any of your comments as well. We have a few announcements just before. We want to make sure you know we have a wonderful service in store for this Sunday. 10 o'clock is our Kid City live video, and you do not want to miss this. We've got some special video there that do Facebook or YouTube, and of course, our phone system. And we're happy to provide that accommodation. So tonight is May 6th. I know you're not supposed to date these a lot of times, but just for this case, I want to do this. It's May 6th, the last time that we had service in this building with the congregation, believe it or not, was about 4,000 years ago, right. March 15th. Does anybody remember that? If you're watching and you were there, Bishop Jordan preached about the amazing grace of God. Yes. Remember that service? Can you believe that was 52 days ago? That's crazy. Been doing this for a long time. You have been doing this for a long time, not just this whole live stream business in some time. And I do believe that you're seeing a little light at the end of the tunnel, but we're in it for a little bit longer. So tonight we want to start talking about, obviously, when you are in that situation, months, weeks of just your life topsy-turvy, quarantine, jobs changing, habits changing, all of that. There's going to be financial, there's going to be spiritual, there's going to be relational effects. Not necessarily always bad, but there's going to be effects. There's going to be things you have to account for. Right. And, we believe that God has spoken truth in the Bible that applies to even situations like this. Sure. You can look at the Bible and say, well, where did it talk about how we live in a quarantine? Well, truth is truth. From beginning to end, the Word of God is leading us. And so tonight we want to start by talking about that a little bit. This past week, the church made available a survey. We just wanted to hear from all of you about some of your thoughts about this quarantine phase, some of the things that maybe you find about it, some of the ways that it's affecting you, some of your struggles, some of the things that you found have been blessings. And I think this was a wonderful idea, and it was awesome to be able to take a part of that survey, and it was awesome to be able to kind of see what kind of the mentality of some of the churches in 2 days of quarantine. What were some of the things that jumped out? Maybe what was the reason you did this, or what were the things?
It has been a long time, and even though we have social media. We have the ability to kind of interact. We've got, thank God for technology. Can you imagine? I know Bishop mentioned the day, had this been 30 years ago, who knows what the impact would have been. Thank God we've got technology, but it's still not being together. Yeah. And, the main impetus behind, get a sense, preaching has been difficult for me in a, in an empty building, because I feed off of people. I feed kind of off their energy, and I try to be sensitive to kind of what's going on in the moment in the service. And so it's been, I haven't left a Sunday. You can kind of get a feel for how they're doing. You can read on their faces. You can see their posture, if they're struggling, whatever. We haven't had that. We really, we try to keep in contact and see social media, but we haven't had that. So the real impetus behind it was we wanted to make sure, how's everybody doing? How is this impacting you? How is this affecting you? Yeah. And how are you feeling now that the newness, there was kind of a season they were like, okay, this is bad. We know this is bad, but we're going to get through this. And we're going to make it. Yeah. And then after it drags on a while, you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm just done with it all and whatever. So we wanted to really kind of feel. So there were several things that really jumped out at me, and I want to share just a couple of numbers. I don't want to get all boring on you, but I do enjoy numbers. And a couple of really important things, I think. 84% of people that responded to the survey, we had a great, really good response and immediate response, but 84% of people said that they were either doing really good right now or even thriving in this situation, which I think is fantastic. I think that's really awesome. 66% said that they were growing. Another number that jumped out to me, and certainly our goal was not to get the attaboys and the pats on the back. We really wanted to genuinely hear, what are some things that we can do? And the number one response was more FAC connections. So you could tell that people were really missing. If you jump on the maybe in the lobbies after church, people are excited to see each other and all that. And so I think that's a big need that people have, and we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. One of the things I love, and I know this, we've talked about this, I was hesitant to do the prayer of blessing thing that we've done. We've talked about it literally for probably, a year maybe. It would be gimmicky, and I know that there's a lot of opinions and thoughts attached to that, but I really felt like that during this time it was important and imperative that we look to God to be our supplier. And 88% of all people that responded said that they're either doing as well as they were doing before all of this, or they were coming out ahead, and there was a significant percentage that said they were actually coming out ahead through all of this. And so that's just the favor of God. That's the blessing of God there. We'll talk maybe a little bit about doing a drive-in service. We're going to do drive-in service on May 17th, and we'll get you more information about that. But 80% were in favor of doing a drive-in service. There were others that said they're kind of in favor of it, but not sure if they're going to come and attend. And we get that. We understand that. Right. And then the other couple of questions, majority of people, there's still some hesitancy and some concerns. And so we'll address all of those things as we move forward, as we start to open things up, making sure that everybody knows, we're going to make it safe and all that kind of stuff. So those were really kind of the main takeaways, and it was really encouraging. I appreciate all of the feedback. There were a couple comments about this format on Wednesday nights. And, again, we wanted to hear from you, want to hear your feedback. And so the reason we've done this on Wednesday night is because Wednesday night is intended to be about practical living. Certainly, I think everybody knows me, and when I'm preaching on Sunday, you'll hear it on Sunday. I believe in the power of the Holy Ghost. I believe in a move of His Spirit. I believe it's so critical. It's so vital. It's so important. We need that. But we also need instruction on how to live practically.
Absolutely.
And so what we've tried to do is in this format on Wednesday night is have conversations and discussions about real life situations and issues of what's going on, which I think is just as spiritual. And so
absolutely.
Hopefully people will understand the reason why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. I think in regards to that specifically, I absolutely loved the conversation you had with Bishop last Wednesday, and one of the perspectives that came out of that is one of the things this season is doing is it's really changing people's perspective of what this is all about,
Right.
coming to the house of God, you know?
Sure.
And it's really making sure people understand mission happens outside of the house of God, right? And when we come to church, it's like training.
Yes.
If I think that's the word you used, or maybe Bishop used it.
Yeah.
But specifically on these Wednesday nights, but even on a Sunday morning, you know, when you are preaching under the direction of the Holy Spirit, and it's uplifting, it's encouraging, it's maybe more evangelistic. Even that, I mean, I'd say, you know, when it comes to spiritual, you know, spiritual is, you know, I would say is our ability to be missional outside of the church.
Yes.
And that's what these nights are for, and these conversations. And so I agree with you, whether it's to fulfill, and at the very beginning, you talked about one of the major pillars is the church needs to continue to edify the body.
Right.
And I think that was a wonderful baseline that we have followed that helps us provide Sunday morning, Wednesday, all that stuff. And it has been edifying. But the one piece that's most difficult, as you said, in a quarantine is how do you maintain that connection from one person to the next? You know, you can't reach through the TV, you know, you can't reach through the screen and really make that personal connection with somebody.
Right.
So there is a little bit of a barrier there. So that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight. And if you want to go there now, otherwise we're going to go there in just a moment. But I had some questions about the survey. I don't know if you...
Yeah, no, that's... I wanted to make a statement about just kind of about the services and that kind of stuff. So go, if you want to ask the question about the survey.
Well, the survey, I was just saying, as a whole, in general, what are some encouraging things? And it could be outside the survey, maybe just things you've seen.
Sure.
Or the way people have answered. What are some things as pastor? So this is just, you know, as the one that, you know, the man of God has the vision for this city. What are some things that are encouraging to you about this season and what you've seen?
Yeah. I think one of the first things that jumped out to me was the way we rallied for each other.
Yeah.
You know, you've heard concern and the compassion for each other. And hopefully, you know, there's a lot of these things. I've been making notes for when we do come back together, you know, about things that we hope don't change.
Yeah.
You know, some things that have happened as a result of this that we hope, well, I don't want to go back to what it was before.
Yeah.
Certainly is one of them. I think it's unleashed kind of this body care, which is the way God intended it. Like the natural body, if you know, there's a part that's wounded, the rest of the body rushes to heal that. And so it's a beautiful thing to watch that. Of course, you know, I'm very proud. I will say this. I mean this, you know, not pride, but I'm proud of our teams that have come together, really way out of their comfort zones. It's kind of been like pulling teeth to try to get them in front of the camera. That's not really their comfort zone, but they've done a great job. Our worship team has done tremendous. Again, it is so just weird. It's just weird.
Yeah.
Worshiping in an empty building, and you know, usually I'm the only one in here worshiping when they're up here singing. So that's awkward. And I've mentioned it many times, but the other thing, I've continued to live on mission.
Right.
If I would say this, one of the things I want to mention about, you know, services, I mentioned this, I think on Sunday, this past Sunday, I mentioned that, you know, as the longer this goes on, you know, we are seeing some trends kind of maybe going in the wrong direction as it pertains to like live stream viewers.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know that there are some options where I don't have to watch it now. I can go back and watch it later and that kind of stuff. You know, ideally, one of the things I think is really important is keeping that routine, keeping that sacred time and that sacred moment. And so I do want to issue maybe just a little bit of a challenge to the church to say, you know,
keep that Sunday morning a sacred family moment.
Yeah.
Because again, the thing the Lord dealt with me early on in this whole deal was what a beautiful opportunity it is for families to come together.
Right.
And so, I just encourage you, continue to stay faithful to that. Stay in there. All of these other opportunities that we're providing, make sure that you're taking advantage of those, because we do need them.
Absolutely. And I want to say, typically when we're ramping up to do our Sunday morning live stream, there's just a very small handful of people here, and we do prayer before we go into that service, just like we would in a normal Sunday before the quarantine. And I can tell, just to reinforce what you said to those watching at home, how important that is. In this past Sunday, I remember praying before the service, and then as we were doing the countdown and as we were doing the worship, I remember staying in a prayerful attitude, and I just felt personally, how sometimes you can feel a longing in the spirit, and I felt this longing in the spirit, and it was as though there was a longing that God had to pour out his spirit on homes.
Absolutely.
That were engaged in the service right then.
Yeah.
And I got this image in my mind of family rooms with people in their family rooms, mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters, and just the same kind of spirit that comes into this building on a Sunday morning when we're all gathered together, that God, it was just like he was just so excited to do that in people's homes.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine having that opportunity and not taking advantage? So I think this is important, why it's so important to have that consistency. And going back to the very beginning of this, when we talked about this word intentional, everything has had its intentionality ramped up, by magnitudes, because you have to be intentional about, okay, this is when the service is. I'm gonna tune in right now. And even when you are calling, you've had call to prayer. This past Sunday, you've had, when we're doing our response to the service, you've called people to do certain things, and I want you at home to be, just be receptive to that, because God's going to move in your household just like he does in a church.
Sure.
And that's the promise that we have, and I really appreciate that. And then also to talk about what you said before, the body care, I just absolutely love that. So one thing that we want to bring to mind is that, we've talked about if we wait, there's an amount of failure there.
Yeah.
Because if that happens, if we're waiting for a church ministry to pop up to accommodate some need, probably someone somewhere has missed the leading of the Spirit to just be the vessel in that moment. And I really love that during this quarantine, as you talked about, I think a few weeks ago, you were ramping up to do some help for some of our senior citizens, and you found out people were already stepping up and taking, and that's exactly what the church should be. And I think we've seen that at FAC, and I absolutely love that.
Absolutely. And I think all of that, we've done some community efforts.
Yeah.
We've fed a couple of hospitals.
Yeah.
We took food this week to Kingston Care Center in Sylvania, and next week we're going to the way that it works. People that do have fear and are concerned. But one of the beautiful in any situation, I mean, think about it. Any difficult situation, any situation like 9/11 or whatever, out of that emerges heroes, emerges people doing good, and we're seeing that. We're seeing people that that are. There was a video I saw yesterday of people that loading up their trunk and going down and feeding the homeless in an inner city area, and and these kinds of things are really important as a church. One of the most important things, and I, looking back at the sermons and things that I've preached, I've, tried to, of course, be sensitive to the Holy Ghost and make sure that I'm preaching what He wants me to preach. But the consistent theme has been hope, faith, trust, steady, anchor for the soul. Don't be moved. And so I think our lives in all capacities should be a living testimony to the world.
Yeah.
And out of this whole situation, yes, there are people living in fear. Yes, there are people that are scared to death.
Yeah.
But I think the church can, by our actions, by what we're doing in the community, and by the way we conduct ourselves and carry ourselves, I think we can communicate to people, this is the hope. This is the hope of the world right here. And we need to be sharing that.
Yeah, what an opportunity to be, well, exactly what the scripture says, to be living epistles
Yes.
read of men.
Absolutely.
And I've heard stories of people in their workplaces and they're saying how some of their coworkers are living in that. They're uncertain,
Yeah.
without hope. And we have an opportunity to be that light. So
I do want to clarify something real
Yeah.
quick. Dan Rock just asked on Facebook Live, so I am watching. I'm watching
Yeah.
these questions and
There you
trying to
go.
answer them live as best I can. They're moving kind of fast, but the question was, who is this we that's taking food places? And just understand that a lot of these places are not real excited about a bunch of people showing up
Right.
with food and whatever.
Yeah.
So we've had to do it, very strategically. Actually, St. V's, they actually arranged the pickup. We paid for it. They took it and took care of it.
Yeah.
Tim Roth helped us with food at UTMC, and then we just dropped it off you can't even get into Kingston, and so we just
Yeah.
dropped it off at Kingston. So it's had to be strategic. It's not a bunch of people going and doing this as much as it's coordinating it. So.
but the vehicle for doing it is the church. And I believe the Kingston effort that we did came from a question you asked
did.
on social media. You said,
Absolutely.
what can we do? And we had a handful of different suggestions of what to do. And that's where that came from. So, it's not as though you don't have a way to be
Sure.
involved. If you have a project or something like that, then
And you
make
can
it known.
give. You can
Right,
give.
you can give.
And our goal is every week doing something somewhere. And so
Yeah.
if you have an idea, don't be
Right.
offended if we didn't do it this week.
Yeah.
We're going to try to get to it as much as we can.
Absolutely.
We knew Kingston was a place that, had dealt with
Yeah.
with the Corona situation.
Right.
And, Brother Condon, of course, is there. And so they were elated. I mean, they
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
just were, through the roof on it. So certainly appreciate that. But you can give. You can
Right.
be a part of this by giving. You can go to Alexio or go to our church website and give that way.
So maybe as a springboard into the second part of our conversation, what are some concerns you have either from the survey or from kind of what you sense in the body right now as
Yeah.
we're 52 days in, as we see these things going and going and going? What are some concerns you have of battles that probably church members are facing, the church body as a whole is facing, and we can springboard into the next part?
Sure. I think there is while people are growing and thriving in their walk in relationship with God, I think there's frustration that's building. There's so much happening in the media, governmental agencies, information. There's information over hospitals, and now the goalposts have kind of shifted on
Right,
us.
yeah.
And they've made us feel like if one person dies, and obviously nobody's for that, but
Right.
but we have to be realistic that in a perfect environment with no coronavirus, there's still people that die of automobile accidents and
Right.
whatever. And so it's created this fear. And I do sense that frustration. I sense weariness from the survey from people that, they're just weary with all of the things that are going on. I don't know. It's not weariness from like activity weariness. It's just like, man, it's just still going on,
Right, yeah.
And so there's kind of that whole component, that weariness. And then I do think that the biggest thing that we're missing, the Bible says that when we come together, we edify each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's why it's important in the last days that we forsake not the assembling of ourselves together, even as we see the day of the Lord approaching. Thankful that we have these opportunities.
Right.
But there is something, I think when we come back together, there's going to be that greater appreciation. And I do think that the longer this goes on, the disconnectedness, we're a disconnected society anyway.
Yeah.
You've got 3,000 Facebook friends, but like 3 real friends.
Right.
And we're not real good about doing life together. And this isolation and quarantine can reinforce and force us into more isolation. And God designed us even for the introverts.
Obviously, we're living in a isolation is just such a dangerous
It is.
thing.
It's a dangerous thing.
even before there was any social distancing.
Correct.
People from the church. And so I do believe, as you said, one of the things that we have to make sure we don't allow ourselves to get comfortable in isolation, you know, the bare minimum of connection with one another. So even though we're forced to be socially distant, we have to find a way to cross that gap and still be able to edify one another. And I was talking to one of our saints today, and, you know, not even that you want to come here so someone can kind of encourage you, because that does happen, but also your ability to go and encourage other people. There's a vitality to that I think is necessary for a disciple. And so that leads us into our next topic, and really one of the most important things about tonight, and for those of you watching, this is an incredibly important venture that we're moving into with First Apostolic Church, and we want everybody to be involved. And so what is FSA doing to bridge that connection gap?
Yeah, so, you know, about 4 years ago, we started really intently and intentionally moving towards discipleship. We'd always been kind of an evangelistic church, but now we were moving towards discipleship and multiplication. And we'd always, the foundation of that are discipleship multiplication groups. And so that's always been the vision, and we have many multiplication discipleship groups that were taking place prior to this. But we'd also talked about how do we continue to bring people together. We don't want to have just like these. So cell group ministry was started. The reason it's called cells is because cells multiply and they grow. And so that was the concept. It wasn't just to have another church event, another church program. And so I was always hesitant and leery to do any kind of small groups because I didn't want it to be another church program. It had to have the foundation of discipleship multiplication. Well, this situation, I think, has kind of forced our hand just a little bit, where now the need for connection is so critical and so important that I feel like we need to is more intimate, more personal. Again, you can watch on Facebook Live and you can have the comments and you can do whatever, but it's still not that personal interaction and engagement. You can, watch the services and all that, and you're still missing that piece.
Yeah.
So starting this Sunday night at 6 p.m., we're actually launching 2 different types of life groups. I want to be clear about this, make sure people understand. So this Sunday night, we're launching the main portion of our life groups. And basically what we did is we looked at all of the people that are regular attenders and have been consistent in coming to church or are connected and a part of the church, and basically tried to break it up. We have 14 different life groups that are currently set up. And we just tried to put people in organic, natural groups where, there's going to be natural relationship, maybe common interests, common age ranges. Not necessarily the case. Maybe an opportunity to meet new people and connect with new people. I will say this. I mean, I labored for it's taken longer than I would have liked, and part of the reason that it took longer than I liked is because I want to make sure, I wanted to do my best to make sure that we didn't miss anybody if at all possible. Right. So I just want to put this caveat out there that if you were left off the list for some reason, please accept my apology. I thought I had everything, every I dotted and every T crossed, and I got a message from one of our leaders saying, hey, I don't see this person on there. I think you left him off. And so that may happen, and I do apologize for that if that's the case, if you get left off. So if you should have been or will be contacted by a life group leader this week about this Sunday, about what group you're in. You'll be given a Zoom link. All of these are going to take place on Zoom. Right. You'll be given a Zoom link, and from 6 to 7 o'clock on Sunday night, we'll be doing these connection life groups. So it's really built around building that connection. Right. I will say the foundation of this is multiplication. We want these groups to multiply. Right. We want you to use this as an opportunity to somebody that is, maybe God is drawing them or God is moving on them, or you've been, we want multiplication and discipleship to still be the foundation of this. I can't say that enough. These are not cell groups. These are still discipleship multiplication groups. In this situation, connection is the primary driver, but with the foundation of discipleship and multiplication. And then the second group will be happening. So those life groups will start this Sunday and then go every other Sunday until the end of June. I think the last one's June 21st. And then the alternating Sundays, we'll be doing interest-based groups. And those groups are open to anybody and everybody. I've already talked to, obviously one of the groups that I've been concerned about are our elders. Just, how do they stay connected? And so I've talked to Jim and Sue Ward, and I've talked to Ron and Diane Vincena. The Wards do Young at Heart. Vincenas do Helping Hearts Mend. And they're going to do conference calls with these groups because, those groups were growing, probably some of our fastest growing groups. And the leaders have done a great job with that. And so they're going to be doing conference calls to keep them connected. But we also have some other groups that are going to be meeting. We've got ladies. There'll be a ladies meeting. There'll be a men's meeting. You're going to do one for families. And so, if you want to maybe share some information about what families.
So we talked about one of our Wednesday night discussions, I believe, was, adopting or establishing the priesthood in your home.
Sure.
And I don't want to sound like too out there, but we know that passed down to your children. And so in 2020, whether it's quarantine or not, there are principles that are so incredibly important with, raising a family and allowing your family to see what it means to be a disciple of Christ. And that's part of mostly what that group is about.
That's awesome. And I think it's going to be really helpful to people. So ladies and men will be once a month. Families will be once a month. And then Sean Sullivan, we actually, before any of this had ever happened, he and I had been talking quite a while about starting an end time study. Open to anybody, whoever wants to come, and trying to figure all of that out. And so felt like this would be a really good introduction into that. And Brother Sullivan's done a lot of studies, got a lot of information.
I don't think Zoom's ready for that one.
I know.
That one's going to be intense. It's going to be awesome. But, this opportunity to kind of dive in and look at some topics that are interesting to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So these will be open to anybody, and so if you don't have to sign up for it every other week and sticking in that one, just because there's a lot of information that you're going to need to understand what's going on to the next ones. And so we'll be getting more information about that, but we want to provide those interest-based groups, the ones. That we talk about prophecy, ladies, men, all that kind of stuff. Those coming out of this quarantine situation, those were Path and Track is Lifeway in Dayton, and they started this. Actually, they started it, I think, 2 weeks before quarantine. They started their interest-based groups. And the overwhelming majority of people that were in their interest-based groups were not church people. And so, we're going to be doing more about that. And probably what we'll do is, depending on how long this all goes and what happens, probably look to the fall. We may continue life groups through July and August and then launch interest-based groups in September. But this is something that I do feel is important. One of the I don't say concerns, but one of the questions, I've had is just how connected are we as a body? We talk about being apostolic, and there's a lot of definitions about what it means to be apostolic. Some of it think it just means to be doctrinally apostolic, or experientially apostolic. But the reality is, apostolic should affect and impact every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you find about apostolic is the early church that was apostolic was that they embraced life together.
Yeah.
They shared in good times and bad times.
Absolutely.
They cared for each other. When one church was, suffering persecution, the other church would come to the aid. And Paul commended the one church. He said, you're struggling, and
Yeah.
yet you still took up an offering to give to this other church. And so I think doing life together, being connected, is as apostolic as you can get.
Absolutely.
And is a really important part in an area where, just quite frankly, I think we as a church need to grow.
When I read the book of Acts, I'm not going to deny the doctrine. Of course, we're going to remain doctrinally sound. We are apostolic doctrinally, experientially. But the more I'm in this and the more I grow in this, when I read the book of Acts, I just see a group of people that were committed to each other. They loved each other. They were sacrificial for each other. And I believe that goes a lot of the way to explaining why they were different.
Yeah.
They were a little bit, maybe experienced different things. They had this love, and they, as it says, they held all things in common.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk too much about that, like the intricacies of that, but
Right.
it does tell us that they loved each other
Yeah.
enough to do it, which is amazing. So this is an opportunity for us to shore that up.
It is, and I, probably my biggest concern about all of this is my recoil away from church order, and that's apostolic. You look at the first real contention that arose in the book of Acts church, and it was about the care of the widows, and there was order and there was structure to that. It was a real need that was present, and they implemented a solution. So I don't want to just shy away from it because of that. But what I also don't want to do is I don't want to just do something that does not fit with the vision of who we are as a church.
Yeah.
And so again, it's not just about us coming together and all that. It really is about how can we use this to change our world.
Absolutely.
Here's the beauty of this. This is the beautiful thing is when we do that right, when you have that commonality, how unified you are. Reese and I, when the Cubs won the World Series, finally after 108 years.
We got the video, I think, on the computer.
I know, right? I know. We went to we do have that video. Reese and I went to the parade, and walking down Michigan Avenue.
Yeah.
Literally, if you've ever been there, it is so wide. And from building to building, all the way down, as far as the eye could see, were people. And everybody was singing, "Go Cubs, go, go Cubs." Like people from different races, different nationalities, different backgrounds, all this kind of stuff. But they were unified about one single thing, and it brought us all together. And we talk a lot about just on the purpose. What happens is there's just this natural unity that comes together. And I think that's important in these life groups.
Absolutely.
Is we're focused on the mission. And as we come together, we're strengthened, we're edified, we're built up together so that we can go do the work of the mission together.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So let's talk practically.
Sure.
For those saints of FAC that, they're consistently coming on Sunday mornings, Wednesday, people in ministry.
Yeah.
If I'm that person, just a little bit, what should I expect from these life groups, and what will I get out of it if I commit to it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really, really good question. I think what you'll get out of it is there will be personal growth. One of the foundations, again, we're kind of using the model of discipleship in this whole process. And so the foundation of all of discipleship is I first must be the disciple. And so having that opportunity to stay connected with each other, accountable to each other, talking about, one of the things we've been doing the YouVersion devotional together.
Yeah.
And we've averaged about 50 to 60 people in these devotionals. And I've been encouraged reading the comments at the end, and it's amazing how the word speaks differently to people based on where they are and what they're going through.
Absolutely.
It's been awesome to watch that and to see that happen. And so the first thing that I would say is the spiritual formation in you. You'll see that grow because you're going to be challenged. You're going to hear testimonies. You're going to hear stories about what God is doing and how He's speaking to people. And so that really is kind of the first foundational concept is how's God speaking to you through His Word, through His Spirit? How are you being spiritually formed into His image? And then the second component is about living on mission. And you've been in some of those discussions, some of those meetings. We've had nights of prayer, and we'll all go off to our own place and pray for a little while, and then we'll come back together. And then you hear people talk and realize how the Spirit just speaks to us in unity and commonality, and we get edified and built up that way. And so that is another way you're going to be challenged. It is important, even in this time. The book of Acts church was not. It didn't spread around the world in ideal circumstances. It spread around the world in persecution. Spread around the world. Paul's sitting in jail. And so we can't look at it and say, well, we need to hit the pause button on missionality right now because we can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. We have to find a way. And so talking about that is critical. And then part of it is just that connection with people, just having that time of being able to see each other, to talk to each other, and have that connection. I think that's a big part of all of that.
And if people need to understand, saints of God, to understand, you need to understand that your presence in the church on a typical Sunday when we're not in quarantine, when people are gathering together, your presence there makes a big difference for everybody else. Right? Your worship will encourage me to worship, and it might give me more liberty and all these things. So that doesn't need to be different when it comes to our conversations, our spiritual conversations, the things we're sharing, the things we're reading. And what I've found, just talking about those meetings we've been in, is that kind of snowballs.
It does.
And
absolutely.
What you're going to find is it's going to be 7 o'clock like that. And you're going to be like, wait. This is what this is what God do. It does create this hunger. And I can testify that when that process gets going, whether it's God doing it divinely or it's just happening and you're noticing it now, and it always has happened, but you'll run into people that you didn't expect to run into, and they need to hear exactly what God has been speaking to you. And this is how it, serves that missional purpose for being a disciple in the church.
Well, if I could deal launching it on Mother's Day, and we do understand that, and so being that we're still under quarantine, we felt like we could go ahead and do that without compromising the efficacy of the groups. And so we do understand if there's situations, we certainly do understand that. But what I would ask is, first of all, number one, is make it a top priority. Time I'll go or whatever, put it on your calendar, make it a top priority because, again, all of the benefits, all the things we talked about, but not just for you personally. I think this is really important, is you have to understand that there are other people, you may be doing great. 80% of people said they were thriving during this time, but there were a large number of people that said, I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I'm weary. And they may have felt like they were thriving on the day they took the survey. And then the next day, who knows what happened to them. And so this isn't just about us, it's about, we have a responsibility as well to encourage and to help other people. So make it a top priority and commit to it, commit to being there every time. And then lastly, I would say to being engaged. Don't just go and I'm just gonna check this thing out and see how it goes and just be involved, be a part of it, be a person. Zoom can get weird anyway. It can get awkward, and I know we've had some technological issues in just Like you mentioned it the other day, every service.
Yeah.
I mean,
Things happen in that for no reason.
It just happens. I was on a call today, and the guy just froze up and like stuttered for like 10 minutes straight. And you know, I mean, Zoom just has issues, and it can get awkward. Like people start talking over each other.
Right.
And but what I would say is embrace some of that, but be a part of it.
Yeah.
Don't make your leader like just have to sit there in awkward silence and pull stuff out of you. Be involved, be engaged in it, because again, you never know.
Right.
The word that you might say or speak might be what somebody else needs to hear. You know, I left on Sunday. I think I mentioned this the other day, but I left Sunday and felt like, man, I just didn't communicate what I wanted to communicate, and it just was tough, and I struggle. My ADD gets so bad in an empty building, it's horrible. I hear every noise, and even tonight, I could hear them talking in the media room. My brain was like trying to listen to what they were saying, and so you know, all of those things, it's it's challenging and struggling. And then I get home, and somebody sends me a message and says, "Hey, you never know, you might, your testimony, your story, what God has spoken to you might be the thing that pulls somebody up out of that darkness and gives them hope to keep on pressing on."
Absolutely. So as we kind of last few points here, talking about big picture. Now in the book of Acts, you saw this super amazing, huge, thousands of people strong church in Jerusalem, and things are going swimmingly. They're awesome, right?
Is that the phrase?
Swimmingly. Yeah, swimmingly. Everything is going swimmingly, and persecution begins, and people are thrust into a very awkward, uncomfortable, strange situation, and some might say, well, then the reaction was this happened. The reaction was they did this. The reaction was they did that. But what we find is that one thing there, that uncomfortable situation, is what launched the church into regions it might not have gone otherwise. Not readily. It went into Antioch, and then from there into all of Asia and Europe, and of course the church that covers the globe was born. Okay, so let's talk about this season. We believe, because before there was any talk or any inkling of coronavirus, quarantine, anything, there was and it will reach all over the globe.
Right.
So in that respect, let's talk about how these life groups are not as much a reaction as it's something that we believe God is using to bring about that expected prophecy that he's already placed, and that is multiplication. And that is growth like we have never seen before. So let's talk about, like, in your vision, how does this play a part?
Jesus dealt with the crowds and the multitudes, right? He did miracles, he taught, he did all of those things, the multitudes. And there's certainly, and that's, you know, I think I've talked about it before, but the discussion about, you know, the church has left the building, and no, but the church is still important, and obviously it is. Hopefully there's been a recalibration to bring us back to the center of truth, where what happens in the big settings are important. We have great experiences, great encounters with God, and those things are awesome, and we become edified and built up. But how did Jesus change the world? The way Jesus changed the world was he brought in the most disciplable. He could have pulled in 150. If you would look at it from a natural standpoint, you would look at it and say, dude, you need all 5,000 of these people on the hill to change the world. And that's not what Jesus did. Jesus said, give me the small group of disciplable people. so I can pour into them my values. I can share with them things that I'm not able to share in the big setting, right? I can tell you this as a preacher. You know, sometimes it's hard, it's frustrating because there's some things that you want to say, but you don't have time to say in a sermon or set it all up or whatever. And so those things are better communicated in a smaller group, in a smaller setting. But what did Jesus do? He brought them in, not just so that he could keep bringing them in. He brought them in, and then he said, okay, now you go. And sent them out to go to continue to do the work. And so the vision is that out of all of this, I do believe that we're going to be more focused on the important things. I mean, I for me personally, it's caused me to reevaluate a lot of things that we stress over, that we maybe fuss over or whatever, that are totally unimportant. What's really important? What's important is the mission. And I really believe that out of this, I believe that these life groups, there's going to be natural growth. I believe there's disciple makers that are going to happen. And out of this are going to be groups that, however that goes, we're totally fine with that. They might just be little, seasonal things or whatever. But certainly out of those groups we're going to launch and send people out to go and do the mission because that's the most important thing.
That is awesome. That brings to mind, I've been reading in the book of John, and it just blows my mind. You've got in the book of John, chapters 1 through 12, it's everything that Jesus was doing, all these miracles. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Half the book is just Jesus and his disciples.
Absolutely.
And what Jesus did with his disciples in those chapters, talking to them, praying for them, is what empowered them to be the multiplication church that they became.
That's right.
So you may find yourself Sunday night with 11 other couples, and it could be that moment that kind of solidifies or drives that mission in you as a family to go do something that you probably thought you couldn't do before. People you couldn't reach before, things you could not say before. And so we absolutely believe that that's part of it. Any last thoughts concerning the life groups? Any final charges you want to give to the church?
No, and I know there may be some that are concerned about Zoom and all of that. It's the best thing out there. If you have questions, let us know. We'll try to help walk you through that.
Specifically, if someone's watching now, and we might have people that are, a lot of our life groups were based on our attendance, right, before the quarantine. So you might be watching now, and you've been a member of FAC for the past 52 days. Because you've watched everything. What if someone is in that boat and they want to be connected to a life group? What should they do?
Email me at seniorpastor@factoledo.com, and we'll get you connected into a group. And if you have somebody that you're in a group and you want to add somebody, just talk to your leader and talk to them about adding them in the group. And then also, if you have questions about Zoom or whatever, I'd encourage you to talk to your leader, or you can think, we're going to get the value and the benefit of connection with each other. We're going to get the value and the benefit of being edified by being around each other. We're going to get the value and the benefit of sharing his word. And, I believe you. I believe that with everything that's within me. There's going to be encouragement for your soul. But with all of that, the question becomes why? Not just for you to make it to heaven. That should be a given. After all God has done for us, after all that we've experienced, that should be just the bare minimum. But the reason for all of that is so that we can be empowered to do his mission. He came to seek and to save that which is lost. He came to find the broken. The doctor he's not for those that are whole. He's for those that are sick. And that's what God has called us to do. And so, these life groups, my prayer is God empowers you, strengthen us, encourage us, help us to be strengthened on the inside, but let this launch us out into the mission in a way that we've never seen or experienced before, and will carry us into what you said, the prophesied multiplication revival, the destiny that settles and rests on this church.
Amen. I remember when we were doing this discussion, And we kind of talked about that, and we were still in the planning process. You were still in prayer about wondering, but I remember when we talked about the potential that this gives us, and when we began to talk about that I just felt a very strong heaviness of the Spirit. So that God is definitely in this.
Amen.
And He's in it for your family, for you, mothers and fathers, or even if you're a young couple or if you're single, God's in it for you. And I believe that God's going to do great things for you with these life groups.
Absolutely. Amen. And again, if please forgive me if I left anybody off the list. Certainly it's not intentional, and
right.
we don't want this to be a source of contention. And so if for some reason you've not gotten a call, or you feel like you might have been left off the list, let us know. Now, I will say to our elders, there are many that are a part of Young at Heart, that is their group, and they're going to be getting in contact with you about their conference call. There'll be some information about that, but you can let us know, seniorpastor@factoledo.com. And just want to say, we've been working really hard as a staff to make sure that we're doing everything we can. One of the things I love out of this is the awakening of how vital my own personal drive in my relationship with God.
Yeah.
And it should be a pretty good revealer to me of, I don't know what the future holds, but if I can't stay spiritually strong in this kind of situation,
right.
what's going to happen as things start to, to escalate in the end times. And so, I believe all of this is helping us. I think it's making us stronger. Right. The coronavirus, one of the things that we need is some exposure to be able to fight it off. Yeah. And so this actually, as difficult as it is actually making us stronger as a believer, as a church, as a movement. It's going to make us stronger. And I do believe what you said, the church in Jerusalem was forced out. I believe this is going to force us out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One final question. So when the Cubs won, and there's that big parade, that's kind of like when the Cavs won the 2016 championship, and there's that big parade in Cleveland. It was similar, right?
No, it was It was rigged, man. Listen, we can't bring that up when we're talking about the last dance, Michael Jordan, the GOAT.
Yeah.
Like, don't even, we don't go there. But.
I guess so. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and more so, we hope you are excited about life groups and that you're able to join your group with their spiritual conversation Sunday night. We know it'll benefit you. It's God's will for His church to be missional, and this is how we're doing it in this season. So we thank you for visiting us. Look forward to our services Sunday at 10 a.m. Kid City and 10:30 worship. And it's going to be a great, great service. God bless you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today at FAC. We certainly hope that you enjoyed this live stream service today. Now, we want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to continue in giving. And you can do that by going to our church website, which is factoledo.com, or you can also do that on our Alexio app. Also, we want to make sure that you're following us on all of our social media platforms, and be sure and turn on all of the push notifications so you're keeping up with all of the information as it becomes available. And you can also interact with us and communicate with us. We certainly want to stay in touch with you during this time. Again, join us every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. for live stream of our Bible study, and every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. for our full family worship service. We look forward to seeing you then. God bless.